Yeah, just
Second for technical difficulties.
making sure.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is John Baranka. I have the privilege of being able to present to you the work we did just a couple of weeks ago to update the Mars telescope. Now, I'm doing this for Peter Detterline. He's actually the person who's in charge of that, and he apologized for not being here. And fortunately gave me the opportunity. First of all, the Musk Observatory. You can see it on over here on the. Oh, that's easy. You can see it there sticking up on the left, on your right side. And what the problem was is that it was a good location, except that over time, when they put it up, they didn't realize that there would be a shifting in the geology of that area, and so as time went by, it began to sink, and they were having real problems being able to use it for photography. And during the Christmas of 220, they set up the telescope, and this is a crew. This is Peter Detterline and Reed, and let's see, I only know a couple of those people. Just Peter and Reed. He was the commander at the time, and so they set up the telescope in the observatory, and it was a 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. And on the 1st of January, they would call first light of that telescope. They looked at the Whirlpool Galaxy, and you could see the imagery you can get from there, and that was just really, really beautiful. And the problem was that when they start trying to take pictures, the thing got out of line, and it wouldn't follow properly. And the solution was to move the telescope off of the ridge. In about a couple of weeks ago, as I said earlier, we got together. There was 4 of us got together down there, and for the purpose of setting up the new telescope on a new pad. Prior to that, this is the old telescope, and you can see how rocky and loose it is. And so they built a new pad for us. The telescope, as you can see, was up there still on the corner. This is before we moved it. And we had, in addition to a pad, they also ran electricity from the hab over to the pad. The crew was Judd and Peter. Let's see. Good guy. Okay, that was Judd. Come on, Chadi Buru. That's not swear words, by the way. Peter, myself, one of Peter's students, and this gentleman was from the same location as Peter, and he is a super excellent photographer. His name was Gary. Okay, this is we had to move the dome off of the mountain. I had the privilege of being the person pushing the camera button. Anyway, we moved the dome down, and then proceeded to move the sides of the observatory down. Okay, one of the problems we had was The pier, we used the pier from the previous telescope, and as you can see on this side right here, that was a new telescope one. That was a new skeleton telescope mount, but it wouldn't fit on this, so they put an adapter on it. As you can see, they put an adapting device on it so we could use the new base for the telescope. Okay, it turned out that we had ordered a new dome, the rounded part, and it hadn't arrived yet, so we just set the telescope up outside and kind of did it backwards. In the process of this, though, we were able to align the telescope and take some photographs. First photograph was M13, which is globular cluster, which is absolutely beautiful, as you can see in this photograph, and then the Dumbbell Nebula. So essentially, we got to play with the toy a little bit and see what it would do. The other thing is we looked at Uranus and Neptune just as an additional trial for the tire. And the next day the parts came. You can see the new parts. The deal with this was that the walls it was very confining in there, and you didn't have any place to put anything. So with these new walls, we'll have to put this thing up first. With the new walls, you can see that part sticking out, which gave you a place to put your equipment, like your lenses and all the other kind of equipment, or sit down if you want to. Okay, and then the dome came the next day, so we put the dome in place. Secured everything, tied everything together. You can see where do we go? You can see right there, that's a solar cell or a solar panel that actually keeps the batteries charged for moving the dome around. Okay, also we were able to try out the shutters, because the shutters were also electrically controlled. And now we have a new place it's much more accessible, because going up that hill was rocky and slippery, and it's amazing nobody got hurt, but this will be a lot safer situation to use a telescope. And of course, some of you didn't see the whole layout of the hab. You can see the greenhouse and the hab, and of course we have solar panels here also to run the lights or heater for the greenhouse. Okay, time now came. Speaking of wind, it's interesting. There was a concern about the wind, and would the observatory handle the wind? Well, just by our good luck, you can see in the background all the dust. It was about 55 miles an hour wind speed. So there was a favor done for us with that, to be able to see if this thing would hold up. Okay, the other thing, the important parts about this, we got a new mount for the telescope, which was much more sophisticated, and it will work much, much better for photography than the previous one had been. Okay, we also have a camera that we can put either directly on the telescope or use it with another smaller scope, wide-angle telescope. Of course, using this telescope for a guide, to actually guide the one up here on the object we were after. Also, this thing is set up so that you can run the observatory completely with a computer, or you could take that computer, and it's wired such that we could put the computer in the hab. You can see where the telescope is out there. You can put the computer in the hab and run it from the hab. But if you were a person who wanted to do that, you'd have to bring your own laptop and also have the right programs in it, but that can be done. Also, the other thing is that if you want to learn how to use this, it teaches you how to do these different things: open and close the observatory, operate the telescope, image using the telescope. And can we turn the lights down a whole bunch? How many of you had the opportunity to see the Milky Way like that? The beautiful part of this whole thing is that down in that area of the United States is known for being to have the darkest skies possible. And you can see that this is, let's see if I can get down here. Okay, that's Sagittarius, and you can go all the way across the sky to the north horizon on this, and you can still looks nice and bright. So with that is a good example of how good astronomy can be done down there. We also took a picture of the moon, where the focus wasn't as good as it could have been, but you can see a real good detail on that. Okay, so anyhow, we got all those things, and we tried the thing out. The next thing is, well, first of all, you can, if you want to learn how to use this, what you need to do is just click on astronomy, and it'll take you to all the information that you need to do to learn to run the telescope. Now, the other thing that's important is that you have to learn how to run the thing, and it can be done online on this particular place, this location that I'm showing you. And what you can do is there's a questionnaire online after you've gone through the training. You fill out the questionnaire, and then once you've got that done and show Peter that you can use that telescope, well then you essentially, when you go out there, or if you go out there, you'll be able to use it. There are two categories. There's a visual category and a photography category. The visual is very, very easy. I had a chance to play with it for about a half an hour after we had it set up, and it's right on. You just punch the buttons for where you want to go, and you're there. But there's more to it, just obviously, because when you've got a camera, then you've got to do a number of other things to make it work. Well, this is Peter, and here's Peter's email address if you ever want to get a hold of him. And we wish you clear skies, okay? Now, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. By the way, I teach astronomy at the community college, and I've taught aerospace science for about 40 years is all. Yes?
So, what do you see as, I do apologize, I've been jumping in and out of this room. What do you see as the next project at MDRS as far as a construction project?
Okay, as far as this astronomy.
Well, that or MDRS in general.
Okay, we've talked. I'm on the panel that people who work directly with that. Of course, you know Gene and Shannon and I do a lot of stuff down there because Jean, not because she's close, because she is so devoted to what we're doing. You know, Shannon lives within driving, and I live within driving range. And we were going to just upgrade everything. I have a lot to do with the engineering, which means, does the generator work? Have we got water? Does the toilet work? You know, all those kinds of things, because those are, all of you know, if those things don't work, if the generator's dead, we're dead. So anyway, we do have a local person who comes out, and he can fix anything. He's one of these guys that, as Gene was mentioning about the crews in Hawaii, you need somebody who can fix everything. We categorize that as engineering, but it's actually fixing. And anyhow, but we're going to actually just make it cleaner, make everything work better. And there's a lot of work being done on an upgrade of reporting data and all of that type of stuff. We had problems with sickness with our Capcom last winter, so it was a little bit spotty. But with me, I'm mostly concerned is, does everything work? Because if you come from Brazil and things don't work, you say, boy, I've sure wasted a lot of time and a lot of money, right? And the other thing is that we would like to have more people volunteer to be involved with running it. You know, the Capcom particularly, we're very short, and with our other science and other engineering, other things.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Just curiosity, do you think we believe that the telescope that we use here in the Earth would need adaptations to work on Mars?
Otra vez.
A telescope. Oh, thank you. A telescope that we use here on Earth would need adaptations. I don't know if the right word, if it's the right word, to work on Mars.
Adaptations.
Adaptations. Thank you.
Very, very good.
Would it need adaptations to work on Mars? I think what would have to change on it?
Okay, let me ask you, if your crew wants to spend some time talking to me or with Gene about improvements and things, please let us know. We'll take the time to talk to you about that, okay? Or adaptations, okay?
We have a few more minutes for a couple.
Okay, very fine. Yeah, okay, very fine. Another question?
Yeah, is the telescope available through the internet? Are you able to direct it or utilize it through
Just
the
tell me
internet?
what he said.
Can the telescope be controlled? Do you have any kind of a networked control system for it so that you can operate it, say, when there's not anybody at the site? Like through the
No, not that I know, but I will mention that to Peter. But we do have, the only remote we have is simply from the Hab too, but it's wired. It's not electronic.
So it can be operated from the hab?
Yeah, definitely.
This is a way to get the people in the Hab to interact with students and educators in other parts of the world, because they can communicate with the crews that they have by email, and then they can go take pictures or the videos that the students want, and send them back, upload them later that day when the bandwidth, in the low bandwidth or the high bandwidth region of the day. And so that you can get something, ideally you can get something like a 48-hour turnaround to get a picture of a particular part of the sky.
Okay.
Viewing conditions permitted, of course.
Right.
It's kind of an interesting thing, speaking of teamwork, Gene and I and Sharon, and Shannon and Dawn, these are the local, and a couple of other people have worked very, very closely all the time to help each other out, and I just want to say that. So I think that's all I've got to say. If there's no more questions, let's give it to Gene, okay?
All right, that was the astronomy in the desert, moving closer to the stars at MDRS. The next panel that we have from 3 to 3:30 is going to be on MDRS. Is it MDRS food study with Dr. Gene Hunter.
Thank you for coming to this presentation on the food study at MDRS. I encourage you to move up to the front so that if you have a question, I can hear you. I don't have all that many slides. Well, I guess I do, but I won't be going through quite all of them. So if you have a question that's burning a hole in your brain, please wave your hand and ask it during the middle of the presentation. Okay. My name is Jean Hunter. I have sort of two lineages that bring me here. One is my day job, which is as associate professor in biological and environmental engineering at Cornell University. In that capacity, I study a number of different aspects of space life support, diets for medium and long-term planetary missions. I've also worked on water reclamation and solid waste management, not human waste, but trash, cabin waste. I got into those when there wasn't any money in the food part of NASA. I reckon that if they weren't going to let me cook, they'd at least let me take out the trash. But what I'd like to do today is describe for you the MDRS food study. Let's see if I can make this work. Click. Next. Okay, that's not working. Let's see, I can't make this go. I got it, okay, got it. Okay, so the outline is we'll talk a little bit about the food systems and why they're important, and some of the different ways that you can feed either a small outpost or a large colony. And then I'll get into the basic science of the MDRS food study as it's evolved over the last 4 years, and present some partial results from this season because we haven't finished our data analysis. We had a huge amount of data that hasn't, we haven't quite got through all of it, but I will talk about the lessons that we've learned so far, and I'd be delighted to have your questions. Everybody knows something about food, and I would be delighted to learn from you. So wherever you go, you need food. There are a number of types of foods that could be consumed on long voyages. If you look at the upper left-hand corner, who knows what that is? Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, okay? And on his ship and on the Fram and other 19th century and early 20th century polar explorations, they brought shelf-stable ingredients, things that could stay good for months or years without refrigeration. And they had a ship's cook who was a skilled cook who prepared those for everybody to eat. If you then go down from there, you see the ISS. And here, this is a completely different way to feed astronauts or explorers. These are shelf-stable instant foods, either foods in natural form like peanuts and cashews and raisins, occasional canned foods which come from the Russian food supply, freeze-dried foods that you add water and heat, or there are a few foods that have full moisture, and they're essentially canned, but they're canned in plastic bags called retort pouches that one can just heat and open and eat. Okay. Now, the third possibility has some relevance to Mars. This is the Antarctic station. This is catty-cornered from the Endurance. Here they have free frozen storage. Okay, so what they do here is they bring a whole bunch of frozen stuff on a ship, and they airlift it down to the South Pole, where volume is as important as weight for these planes. So whether it's frozen or dehydrated, it's pretty much the same volume. At the end of the year, they ship all their trash back, and then that gets taken back to New Zealand, I believe, for processing. Okay. The fourth one, if you can see that beautiful Hawaiian scene, this is what the permanent colonists among the Polynesian voyagers did. They realized that wherever they went, they would have to grow their own food using local resources. Okay. So this is the taro field in Lanikai in Hawaii. Why is food so important? Well, first is physical performance. If you don't eat, you don't feel good, you can't work, and physical performance is the #1 issue to NASA. Food is actually the #1 microgravity countermeasure. It's more than exercise, certainly. Eating well is what keeps you the healthiest. Now, tight work schedules and circadian disturbances, upset stomach, menu fatigue, even psychological stress can make people eat less. And when they eat less, the bone loss, the muscle loss, the cardiovascular deconditioning of microgravity space travel is exacerbated. The second reason that food is important is the human factors. Food is enjoyable. Food is a reminder of home. Food is a way to interact socially with other people, either sitting around the table and having a good meal, or getting into the kitchen and cooking something for the people that are in your care or that are your good friends. And Jack Stuster, who's a human factors expert from way back, calls food the quintessential habitability issue, and concludes that it carries a disproportionate burden of psychological support in a space capsule or even a planetary outpost where the four walls don't change, your company doesn't change, your tasks don't change that much. The thing that really changes the most is what's on the table for dinner. Now, on the other hand, food systems are expensive. A human being will eat 600 to 800 grams of food per day, depending on how much water is taken out of it, either bone dry to almost bone dry. Preparing the food costs crew time. It costs water, which has to be recycled, can cost power, and those are resource costs that have to be dealt with. So food becomes an engineering issue as well. Okay. So what are the ground rules for feeding a crew? Well, there's nutrition. It turns out that what you need to eat in space is pretty much what you need to eat on Earth. I was sorry to have missed the presentation on spirulina, but and I don't know what points that speaker made. But from a nutritional point of view, spirulina is useful only in a very small amount of the diet because it contains nucleic acid that'll give you gout just that fast. So you have to limit your intake. Also, the edible portion of it, even if you got rid of the nucleic acids, is mostly protein, and too much of that will put a load on your kidneys. And these algae don't really have many carbohydrates. You can get them to manufacture oil, but that oil tastes like the strong smell of canned seafood, so maybe you don't want too much of that either. You need essential fatty acids and antioxidants to keep the body healthy and protect from radiation. You have to go low on the iron and sodium. Sodium because it's difficult to remove during water recycling, and because it promotes calcium loss from the bones. Limitations on iron from microgravity because the fluid shifts result in essentially the concentration of the blood, and the iron that is the excess iron from that extra pint or quart of blood in the body is stored. Too much iron storage isn't good for you. So it has to be nutritionally adequate. It has to be safe without pathogens and with the bioburden of ordinary microorganisms acceptably low. And it has to be acceptable to eat. It has to taste good when it's fresh and even after storage. It has to provide variety. It has to provide choice. Having a little bit of choice, even between two things that aren't real great, is better than no choice. And it has to provide novelty in the face of so much monotony in the rest of the sensory exposure. And it has to be familiar and give you that feeling of familiarity without being boring. Okay. Now, here's a space station. If you were living here or in some other microgravity environment, what would you be eating? Okay. Well, here's what you'd be eating. These are actual space foods. This photograph is from the Johnson Space Center Advanced Food Technology Lab. And you can see a number of different sort of things. Let's see. Pointer. I guess we don't have a pointer anymore. Okay, so on the upper left and on the upper right, there's a brown thing on the upper left and a green thing on the upper right. Those are a hamburger patty and some creamed spinach. They're freeze-dried, so you rehydrate them and eat them. There are, down at the bottom, there's a big black plastic bag labeled beefsteak in real small print. And above that, some MRE cheddar cheese spread. These are retort pouch, so they're thermally processed, but in a lighter weight container than a can. Let's see. You can get a couple of canned items. I don't think we have one here, but the Russian food has a lot of canned fish in it. There's some meats, soups, and condiments. Let's see, intermediate moisture foods are things like the dried fruit at the top. And then there are things that are natural form, they're naturally dry, such as the crackers, way over there on the right, the candy-coated peanuts, and what else? And the cashew nuts. And finally, you have to drink something with all these good foods. And over at the bottom right, you'll find a drink bag labeled Orangeade. And this is kind of like a Capri Sun bag. Only instead of being packaged with wet orangeade in it, just the powder is in there, and you hook it up to a water dispenser, and water runs in there, and you kind of shake it up, and then you sip it through the straw.
Is it Tang?
It's not necessarily Tang, no. They do have breakfast-style orange drink. None of these things are labeled with their actual brand name, so candy-covered peanuts they're either Reese's Pieces or candy or M&M peanut, but NASA's really careful not to allow any commercial food processors to get, I guess, marketing advantage from supplying to NASA. Okay. Now, if you were going to eat this kind of food, originally you'd stay on the ground and you'd taste all of it. You'd taste the whole menu over the course of a couple days. And here is Chiaki Mukai, John Glenn, and Commander Curtis Brown of STS-95 doing exactly that. You can see those orangeade bags there, and the crackers on Commander Brown's plate, and all sorts of little tastes of this and that. And once you decide what you like, you sit down with a nutritionist who helps you put together a 10-day cycle menu or a 16-day cycle menu, depending on how long you are going to be there and where you're going. Okay. Now, one of the most popular things in the NASA diet is the NASA shrimp cocktail. And this recipe comes from Charles Borland's book, The Astronaut Cookbook, which you can get on Amazon. It's really fun. And it says exactly how they make some of these things. Now, this was particularly challenging to make because shrimp come in with a lot of microorganisms, so they had to develop the process in order to reduce that microorganism count very low while not interfering with the flavor or the texture. And here are two astronauts eating lunch. Catherine Thornton has that red thing, which is bird's eye strawberries in syrup frozen. NASA adds vitamin C, and they freeze dry, and then the astronaut will rehydrate it. She's got vanilla pudding, which is just stored cold. They eat that in the first few days, and rice pilaf. And let's see, Al Sacco has clutched between the second and third finger of his hand a peanut butter sandwich on a tortilla, which we eat a lot of that out at MDRS too. Great snack. And you can see the tortillas here. They are the standard bread on the space shuttle and on ISS because they throw off many fewer crumbs than an ordinary bread. Now you could say, why not take a bagel? And bagels don't make crumbs, but then after a couple of days, can you eat the bagel? Okay, and like anybody else who is in an autonomous situation where nobody can tell them what to do and what not to do, the astronauts do kind of like to play with their food, so the crew member at the top has squeezed out a little bit of his fruit punch
from his drink bag, and you can see it forms into a sphere under microgravity. He'd better slope it up before it gets into one of the air filters or the equipment. You can see in the background, his buddy there is eating, and the food isn't falling off his lap because it is Velcroed onto his lap. It's not falling out of the trays because there's no gravity to pull it out. Okay. For missions in microgravity, if you get tired of the food, there's not much you can do about it. You can grow tiny amounts of salad vegetables. This is the LADA growth unit on ISS. And this cosmonaut was photographed near the mirrored door of the growth chamber. He's growing mizuna, which is a kind of mustard green. It's a very piquant kind of salad green. With this unit, every crew member can have a lettuce leaf or two every couple of days, except that only the Russians are allowed to eat it. The U.S. astronauts have to watch their cosmonaut friends scarf it down. Okay. Can you cook in space? Well, it is difficult, and the results are mediocre, but Sandra Magnus, who spent quite a bit of time on ISS, kind of made a hobby of it. You see her Mexican scrambled eggs in a tortilla and her black bean and corn dip, and what she did is rehydrate some stuff and mix it together in a plastic bag, squeeze it into a plastic bag and squeeze it up together, and make sure that your tortilla is folded so that it's structurally strong enough to dip it out of the bag. Better equipment would help, but the main problem is microgravity. So there are a number of issues with the present space food system. Some astronauts claim that food tastes different in space. One of the leading hypotheses on this is that fluid shifts in microgravity lead to nasal congestion. This isn't known for sure, though, and I have a team down in Galveston that's working on that. Another thing that we know is happening is menu fatigue. If you ate at the same restaurant, your favorite restaurant, every day, 3 meals a day, for a couple of weeks, at the end, the food would be the same as it was, but it wouldn't be as appealing. You'd be tired of it. And the same thing happens after a couple of months in space. What happens in that case is, after a while, there's less incentive to eat, less pleasure in eating, so people just don't eat enough. Okay. And finally, this present space food system it creates a lot of waste, and it's not very compatible with a recirculating or recycling life support system. Okay. Now that was ISS. What about on the surface of Mars? Okay. Something we can possibly model at MDRS. Okay. There are a number of things that you could do. You could use a once-through life support system, which is that red line. And what these lines show, on the x-axis is the duration of the mission. On the y-axis is the capital cost, or that is the mass cost of what you take into orbit. So if you take everything, you use it once and you throw it away like they did in the Apollo missions, you wind up with a life support system that's cheap for a couple days and then gets really expensive because you're resupplying your air, your water, your food. If you start recycling air, as shown by, or water, as shown by the orange line, you have to bring some equipment to recycle your water, but then you don't have to resupply the water, or not much of it. If you recycle your air as well, say with a Sabatier and Bosch system, again, you have to bring more equipment, but then there's less oxygen to resupply. And finally, if you're on the surface of a planet, you're going to have people there for a long time, you can bring a farm. And then all you have to supply there is the power to run it, the labor to run it, and a few plant nutrients to keep the plants growing. The best estimates show that food's the most costly thing to regenerate, just because it just can't now be done with chemicals and electricity. You need growing plants, which are heavy and they take a lot of space. The best estimates, to my mind, show that 100% food regeneration, which would be a vegan diet, would take at least a 5 to 10 year mission to break even, and possibly upwards of 20 years, depending on the technology choices. So we could think of putting together a hybrid diet that had some of the prepackaged food that you've seen, some of the flour, rice, beans, shelf-stable foods that the 19th century explorers ate, and then maybe a few things that are grown right there in space. Okay. So I'll skip over this because we're getting late. Here are some wheat plants growing under artificial light. Here is how they might be grown under the surface of Mars, protected from radiation from regolith. And here's another shot of the same thing. And here's a list of crops that could be grown in space. Most of them are highly productive. Most of them are short. They're all delicious. They're all, they have lots of varied culinary potential. It's not just, you don't use them just for one thing, okay? Okay. And if you had a hybrid food system, you could take raw crops like garlic and basil with stabilized crops or from your farm, like dried beans, and processed ingredients, which would be like pasta from wheat. And the beans and wheat could really be brought from earth, and the Parmesan cheese would probably have to be, and you could put that all together to make pasta fazool or some other sort of dish. Okay, let's see. Now, for shorter packaged planetary missions, you can't do bioregeneration. And a completely prepackaged food system is maybe not feasible, but you could do you could do partially a packaged food system to provide variety, and partially a bulk ingredients food system to enhance the variety with stuff that you could cook on site just exactly the way you wanted it. So let's talk about how we did a study on this at MDRS in Hanksville. And here's another old picture of the MDRS. You can tell it's old because the telescope's still up on the ridge. It's not where John and his crew put it. So what we have done out at MDRS is we've used the 2-week missions there as test beds for a long-term mission, just to test some alternatives with the food. There are usually 6 crew members in a rotation serving a mission, typically 2 weeks, but we've seen them as short as a week and as long as 4. And the simulation conditions, which are Mars-like, are Spartan quarters, spacesuits, EVA suits worn to go outside, limited water, limited electrical power, limited communications, and isolation. The people that go out there work on personal projects and long-term science projects. They do research, they test technology, they have artistic and literary projects, and there's a significant reportage and maintenance burden, just like there would be on a real space station. So we give them supplies to feed themselves. We give them first pre-prepared foods like backpacking foods, dehydrated entrees, instant soups, shelf-stable bread and tortillas, peanut butter or jelly, dried fruits, breakfast cereal, instant oatmeal, bean, and all of these things they can eat directly. They can eat it right out of the box or just add water and eat. If they want breakfast cereal, they can add water to dehydrated instant milk and put that on their cereal. Then on the other hand, we provide them shelf-stable cooking supplies. We give them freeze-dried meats, fruits, veggies, and cheese. We give them dehydrated veggies, which are cheaper than the freeze-dried, pasta, crystal eggs, anhydrous milk fat, or ghee, which is just butter with the water removed, and foods in the natural dry form, as you can see, like oil and rice and flour. We give them seeds for sprouts, and then we have a nice big spice drawer with lots of flavorings, balsamic vinegar, olive oil, and so forth, so that people can get a little creative. Okay. We also give them snacks so that if they want a snack, they don't have to stop and cook it. Lots of condiments and various beverages, ranging from Japanese green tea to Gatorade. Okay. The kitchen facilities include a propane stove with an oven, which is scavenged from an old RV, a really nice propane, it's a triple power refrigerator with a freezer, which is also scavenged from an old RV, microwave oven, and other small appliances, including a coffee maker. We give them a pressure cooker, which they can use there. We have another one for the lab as an autoclave. I gave them a yogurt maker, but they took it apart and lost all the bits. And a sprouting kit because we had a beans, an alfalfa sprout project, and ways to cut up the food. So here's how it's organized. The crew always eats the main meal together, usually in the evening, and it's either called pre-prepared food, which is all the instant stuff, or crew-cooked food, which is all the other stuff, and they can use that any way they like. So from 2008 to 2011, we had people alternating days, one day on pre-prepared food, one day on crew-cooked food, and now we have them on 2 days of one diet, 2 days of another diet, because it makes using up the leftovers more simple. So we start them out with a standard meal on their first day in sim, and that way we get a baseline across all the crews. How do they like chili, rice, broccoli, brownies, and fruit punch? Okay. And then after that, they eat their individual breakfasts and lunch and their beverages according to the kind of day it is. They can't use the instant entrees on cooking days. They can't cook on non-cooking days. So they're alternating between a 19th century explorer diet and a kind of an ISS diet. And we don't allow anybody to bring in outside food because that really screws up the food study. Okay. So here are some pictures of the food on the left. Top is chili, broccoli, instant mashed potatoes. Going clockwise, that's a Martian BLT with shelf-stable bacon, tomato paste, alfalfa sprouts, and mayo on a flour tortilla. Down below is whole wheat bread that didn't rise quite well. And then on the left are some cinnamon apple rolls, which apparently came out really good. And on the left you can see the spaghetti and mushrooms on the top, and some mushroom pilaf on the bottom left, and one of the crew members preparing some soup. These are instant foods. Okay. So we collect a lot of data, as you can see. We poll the crews in advance for information on dietary requirements. We give them a food survey to find out what they're interested in eating and what they like to cook. They fill out a daily survey on the food they ate and how they liked it, their mood, their health, and we track the time they spend on food preparation because crew labor is one of the most expensive resources in a mission because you can't have it without crew, and it's expensive to send crew. Okay. So let me skip a little bit to some of the data handling and analysis. We haven't finished our food acceptability analysis for this week, so for this year, but here are the analyses for the last year. Red is pre-prepared food and green is crew-cooked food, and the acceptability goes from 1, which is terrible, up to 7, which is ambrosial. And you can see that both times, both years, the crew-cooked food was preferred. What we're finding is that as we organize the study better, that difference is actually becoming less significant. Okay. Food intake also varies according to how much, what kind of food you're eating. So red again is a pre-prepared food and green is a cooked food. The amount eaten ranges from 1, which is hardly any, to 5, which is much more than usual. And you can see that in the first year, 2010, the crew-cooked food produced a larger intake than the pre-prepared food. And again, we're finding as we improve the design of our study, those differences are becoming less important. Yeah, okay. I'm running out of time, so I'm skipping. We also asked the crews to talk about the high and the low point of their day. And we wanted to see how often food ranked as the high or the low point of the day, which would give us an idea of how important it was. Well, the first year we did this, food ranked as a high or low point 20% of the time. But in more recently, its importance seems to have fallen relative to EVAs and maintenance problems in the HAB. What we do is we analyze these comments into many different categories, including food, so that we can look at what really makes or breaks a person's day on MDRS. And here are some results from last year and this year. You can see in 2010, underneath the green arrows, that for, the upper graph is the high point of the day and the lower graph is the low point of the day, that for, in 2010, the food quality was the high point of the day, food preparation was a high point, much more for crew prepared food, crew cooked food than for the instant food. And what was the low point of the day? Well, it was usually, if it was food, it was a prepared food. But this year, this past year, it wasn't quite as, the difference wasn't quite as great. And this year, 2012, we found that, that while the crew cooked food still outweighed the prepared food as a high point of the day, there were some really bad meals that crews cooked out there. So we're looking at this partly to see what are the things that make or break a day so that we can target what to change about MDRS and about our operational procedures and our facility. Okay. So I'll leave you with a couple of high and low points from 2012. So EVAs usually rank very high on high point of the day. The high point, again, was going out and listening to our resident geologists. The people here with me and what I am learning are the high point every day. So that's an EVA one. I successfully repaired 4 out of the 5 broken EVA suits. And whoever it was, we thank you. Okay. Getting a good handle on comms with mission support, seeing Saturn early this morning on the telescope. I mean, these are the wonderful things about MDRS. Low points, well, the EVA suits are a little close-fitting, feeling claustrophobic in the space helmet, doing dishes in the cold water with the Oasis soap, not sleeping well because of the high altitude, well, for sea level people, and the lack of humidity, getting hair in your face when you're wearing a space helmet, and the survey burden, and we do ask them to do a lot. And then my crewmate uses all the dishes when she cooks, every single one. Okay. And we've had a lot of interesting comments on food, which you can read here. But I'm going to read you one more that's not on the slide. These are L for low points and H for high points. The person who wrote the second comment wrote a high point of the day. I woke to learn someone had found a few packages of powdered drink mix. It was a glorious tiding I had feared would never come. Well, it makes literally all the sense on 2 worlds to have expected powdered drink mix in a food study for a Mars simulation. I had begun to resign myself to an existence without order or purpose where nothing could be trusted. Learning these packets had been found pulled me back from the brink. The moment the first sip of that first glass of lemonade-flavored powdered drink mix touched my lips, all was right with the world. The confusion and betrayal of being part of a food study for badly planned missions, okay, was replaced by the calm mildness of existential joy that only a flavored powdered drink mix can bring. So, yeah, okay, well, so we actually put that in the creative efforts category as well as, but it points out the real high role of food in making or breaking somebody's day, and this comments like this and the data that we're getting are encouraging us to continue the food study in an expanded version, including greenhouse, for the next few years at MDRS, and also to expand it to the high seas habitat. Okay. The last result I want to share with you is food preparation and cleanup labor. You can see the green numbers are for cooking, the red numbers are for prepared food. It does take more time to cook. Okay. Are the results worth it? We don't know yet, so we're going to keep studying this. Okay. Conclusions and lessons learned. In general, crew-cooked food was preferred to the instant foods, but the advantage has declined over the years as we've become better at organizing the food study when we took out the worst pre-prepared foods from the menu, and when we decided to start pre-packing each crew's food separately to prevent the first few crews from eating up all the good stuff and leaving nothing but dry beans and brown rice for the last crews. Food is important, particularly when it's not very good. So when we had poor food, it was 15 to 20% of the day's highest points. It's less than 10% now. Okay? The preparation time has an advantage to the pre-prepared food, but we're looking to see if the preparation time correlates with crew members' skill in cooking or with the ambition involved in what they're making. Okay. So I have a number of people to acknowledge, the HAB managers for the last few years, Engineering and Mission Support at MDRS, the Mars Society, NASA Advanced Food Technology, my students who crank through the data analysis, Bill Kramer for photography, Cornell Statistical Consulting Center for introducing me to logistic regression, thank you, and 4 years worth of MDRS crews. We couldn't have done it without them. And so I will leave you with no-bake chocolate oatmeal cookies and a request for maybe a question or two.
We actually, if we want to move right into the town hall, that's
Okay,
mostly question and answer, and then please.
Okay, we can certainly do that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I am. Now I'm leading the town hall meeting, but I'd like to invite John Baranka and Shannon Rupert, if she's here, to come up and be up here with me to help run the town meeting.
I'm here.
Okay, so I'll introduce them. Those of you who are here for the presentation before this will recognize John Baranka, the logistics coordinator, avid do-it-yourselfer and organizer at MDRS. On my other side is Shannon Rupert, the remote science team director for MDRS. And we're overjoyed to see all of you here today to participate in the MDRS town meeting.
Did you have any slides that you wanted to?
I don't have any slides.
Are there a lot of crew members here?
I certainly hope so.
Well, let's give a shout out. Who's been a crew member? There you go. Look around you.
Yeah, recognize your friends, yeah.
Who's been a mission support person? John Stone, raise your hand. Thank you. This is just a really informal talk for you guys to ask us questions. We also really want to get contact information, and or you can get our contact information. I do want to remind you that the MDRS website should be updated. Give us a week, and you'll have all of our contact. And the application for next season for crew, any mission support, engineering.
Here you go, Shannon.
Am I really not loud enough? Oh, okay. So if you want to be a crew, be aware that application will be online within the next week or so. Any other participants that for the projects or anything, just let us know. Email us. Obviously, there's no formal application process, but we just wanted to kind of like meet face to face with all of you. And for example, Steve Foss is here, and he's a Capcom. Our very first interaction with each other was today, which was really cool. So, questions? Carol?
Actually, I have a comment and a question.
Carol, what do you come up here with us? Because you're part of.
Come on. Talk?
Oh, please.
Come up and use the microphone.
Yeah, you can't. Okay, she's also a part of the team. She's taken crews she's actually a NASA person, and she's taken crews down to the Hab a lot, so she's very much involved.
Okay, well, actually, I did have a question for Jean from her talk. I have been a non-compliant member of food study, and I refused to comply because I thought the food was so horrible. So my question is, do you have a nutritionist as part of your team?
We don't have a nutritionist as part of our team. I do the calculations myself to determine whether there's going to be enough food or not, and to try to get the macronutrient balance, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the fats, in line so that you can have a diet that's balanced in macronutrients. We also make sure that there's extra food, because there are some crew, we don't know how big the crew members are and how active when they come in. So we could have a bunch of football players in one mission, and we could have a bunch of quilters in the next mission. So we figure that nothing can go that wrong in 2 weeks with the nutritional part of the diet. What we've been concentrating on is making the food delicious. So we got rid of the ghee and we brought in anhydrous milk fat, the popcorn butter. Yeah, we got rid of most of the Western tamale pie. We brought in the stroganoff. Every year we go back and we look at what people liked and what they didn't like, and we try to give them more of what they do like and less of what they don't like.
So let me now go to my comment, and actually this is probably something I've said many
Hold the mic
times,
up.
but we go ahead and say it to you guys, since it is what MDRS needs, in my view, more than anything else, is a good manual that is accessible to the crews and online, so that they can look stuff up. So when you're trying to restructure your management team, one thing I would really recommend you have is somebody who basically makes a manual and keeps it up to date. Because one of the recurrent problems at MDRS is people run into a problem and they can't sort out what the system is, what the problem is with the system, and they have to try to reverse engineer it, and a good manual would make all the difference.
Documents editor, anybody out there want to be the documents editor? That's one of the things we're looking for. And thank you, Carol. We're also going to make sure, in the past few years, there's been no documentation online. For anybody who's ever gone to the MDRS website, it hasn't even been updated for 2 years, except for the crew reports. So that is going to change very soon. And yes, we do want to get back to, for example, if you go to the website as it is, I hate to bash the website, but the only manual on there is the Green Hab manual, and we haven't had a Green Hab in 4 years.
Yeah. Question on the left.
I was interested in your food studies, if you took into consideration cultural differences, so when someone is from a particular region or not, and how that affects their
Okay. The question was, do we take into account cultural differences when we look at the food? And yes, we do. So the European crews get more Nutella, and the American crews get more peanut butter. Okay. The European crews, we give them less of the drink mix. And what else do we do? Then we also look at people's food allergies or dietary restrictions. We had one crew member a couple years ago who was gluten-free, and we managed to find a way to feed this crew member. We've had vegan crew members. We've had crew members who are pretty serious about keeping kosher. So we try to be sensitive to that. We also know that the European crew members don't like the sort of the southwestern Mexican type of pre-prepared foods as well as the Americans, because it's not so much a normal part of the diet in Europe. So we tend to give them less of that and more of the stuff that's not spicy. Okay.
Everybody hates the Western tamale pie, and then I had it at the end of the season, and it's not that bad. But I live in New Mexico.
Yeah, you have to put it in a tortilla, but then we would have to tell the crews to do that, because on its own, it's yeah. Okay. Question.
You might laugh, but this is not a joke. The best food I have ever had was during the time I was trying to drop 20 pounds. Have you considered calorie restriction as a means of improving enjoyment of food?
Not at all. No, because hunger is very uncomfortable. and it makes people grumpy and short with each other, and I would rather overfeed people and have them complain that there are too many sweets and too many fats than underfeed them and have them lose weight and maybe not feel good and get grumpy with each other. Okay, so if you want to do calorie restriction, go on a diet or just lengthen your life that way. You have to self-monitor a lot and make sure that you're treating the rest of the world fairly because hunger is just such an uncomfortable condition to be in. Yeah.
My question has to do with, since food is such an important part of this, does any preparation go before? Do the crews start eating a similar menu before they go to the house?
The question was, since food is so important, do crews pre-train on the food in any sense? No, they don't. But if they read the food study documentation well in advance, they will know what they're faced with, and they might start looking at recipes. So I've actually had several consultations from crew members who are going to be there asking me, are you going to have this, or are you going to have that, because I want to make such and such, and I need this particular ingredient. And with enough notice, I can go out to the grocery store and buy it and put it in a priority mailbox and have it there for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that some of the menus went by pretty fast, but did they have any tea or coffee?
Absolutely. Beverages are the most difficult thing to plan. This year, you heard the thing I read out about the powdered drink mix, okay? It meant the world to not just this one crew member, but a number of crew members on that team. But last year, we put in lots of powdered drink mix, and we had to give it away at the end of the season because nobody drank it. So it's really impossible to tell. Yeah, people have really strong preferences for what they drink, and if you don't have it, they're unhappy. And if they don't use it, it gets old, and then you have to throw it away. It's tricky.
So let's talk about food. It's kind of making me hungry, so I'm gonna change the subject.
Okay, great.
Let's talk about doing some science.
I'm okay with that.
Woo.
So I'm a junior in college, majoring in physics. I just transferred to my four-year university, but the school I'm leaving, there's a lot of students interested in doing research. A lot of students interested in doing research. The school I'm going to, I have no idea. I assume so since it's a four-year, but I don't like to make assumptions. But from this perspective, and myself being one person needs to find some sort of research, but I'm a physics student, so what do I do? I've got to come up with my own stuff because the university I'm going to doesn't have a whole lot of stuff. That's where I found this, that's why I found this. So, got to looking at it, and I was kind of interested in all of the obstacles that we're faced off against to get to colonize and settle Mars. Do we have a list of things we can do at our level, at both the university, college, community college level, and at the research station level? Does anybody have an idea of some sort of list of stuff that we could work on? Give us some ideas. Hey, let's check off this stuff. Let's do this project. Let's do this project.
We do have a list of projects that we would like people to do. We're very good when someone says, I don't have a project. We're at the ready. What are your skills, and have we got that project for you?
I don't have a project.
So, well, then we're going to find you one.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't make any sense for a science student or a scientist to go out there and not do what they're passionate about, because then you've got an experience where you just go out there and you don't get what you need out of the experience. And one of the advantages for us is that every crew member that leaves MDRS kind of leaves with a gift. When you first leave, you're not so sure it's a gift. You're like, oh, that was the roughest 2 weeks I ever spent. But hopefully, we've had over 600 people as crew members. and hopefully every single one of them took away something in their field that they could apply to their future.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that happens.
Yeah. Some of the projects we have in mind are, first of all, plant care projects with the greenhouse that's going to be launched in October and in a small way, and then progressively improved over the next few years. We're going to have
And
geology mapping projects.
And Jesse Clark is taking over the greenhouse. House. So, yeah, Jesse's going to take over managing the greenhouse project. So, grab him if you're interested.
So there are microbiology projects, and then there's the long-term planning type projects like the sustainable energy and what was the other?
Resource utilization.
Right.
So we have 4 kind of project areas that in this whole new branching off into building the future on Mars, we have actually, we're looking for these project teams. If you're an individual and you want to propose something for that team, if you are like Jesse and we can sucker you into leading that team, we're good at that too. And so we want to do some new stuff, very new and different stuff. And so if any of those 4 projects that I pointed out earlier today interest you, please definitely let me know.
I know I already asked the question, but this is a little more serious. There was, I believe it was with a NASA crew, there was a period of time where there were serious safety questions raised relating to pollution or lack of ventilation in the hab, and people felt that it's possible they were being poisoned. I think some of them even went to a hotel. And then later I heard the actual measurements of the CO2 levels were nominal. So could you comment on that?
Yes. MDRS has a hatch on the top. It's a cylinder with a hat. The hat needs to be slipped open all the time. And at some point, probably in a windstorm, a crew took the hatch and battened it down. And then imagine you're in a tuna can, and you've taken your main form of ventilation out, and you go to cook a meal, and this particular crew thought they couldn't drink the water, so they were boiling water before they would drink it. So they probably did elevate their CO levels. As soon as the hatch was discovered, it was opened. They did move out of the hatch, out of the hab. Carol and I moved in, and we're still here. Yeah. So I'm assuming that. Well, she. Oh no, Carol's gone. No, I'm looking at her. She's straight back there. So but as a result, what we did is the hatch is no longer. You can't move it anymore. It's fixed, open. That's how it was before, and somehow it dropped closed. So they dropped it. When it dropped closed, they tied it down that way. There are so many CO monitors in that place that it will drive you nuts. They're everywhere, every 2 feet. And
it was CO, not CO2 then.
Yeah. Well, we don't know, of course, because we didn't measure. But it was definitely a blip, a serious blip to those who were involved in it, and we took care of him right away, and the rest of the season was free of any scares. Yeah. So, John?
Let's see, who hasn't had a question yet?
I just had a quick question, and that is, do you do any kind of building on the last experience to make it a warmer experience? Like the comment was made that this was the worst 2 weeks, or it was a difficult 2 weeks. Are you doing things that help the next crew coming in?
Yes. Well, the comment about it being the worst 2 weeks of my life, that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because it's not an easy place to live. It's Spartan. There's stuff that needs fixing. It's a rigorous environment, and someone who's not used to that can find it challenging. As for making it a good place, part of that is up to the crew to make it good for each other And part of it is up to the crew and the mission support to communicate effectively so that before, during, and after the experience, there is a free flow of information and goodwill on both sides. So one of the reasons we're recruiting lots more Capcoms and volunteers is so that our volunteer staff won't get burnt out, and so that we will be able to give not only a larger variety of advice and viewpoints and good service, but also more smiley service.
Plus, if there's one thing I can guarantee you, every crew is going to react different.
Yeah.
How many of you camp out? Anybody in here? Okay, that's what MDRS is like, camping out. Only it's really better than camping out. But if you are not afraid to go and camp out, you won't have any issue whatsoever in MDRS. If it's your first time out doing anything like that, then you may have something, you jumped into something you might not enjoy as much as you thought you would. Does that make sense?
And if you've ever set up a tent at midnight in the dark, or you've ever had your tent drowned by rain or flood in the middle of the night, MDRS is the best place you've ever been.
Yeah. Right. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. Okay.
How do you integrate the University Rover Challenge participants in with the Mars?
We don't. It's a completely separate experience. We work with them. We make MDRS available to them. We've been talking to them about maybe some student team projects that will help us address the communication difficulties that the University Rover Challenge has in communicating between the divisions that are at different points. They're out of line of sight communications, and as you know, cell phones don't work out there. So over the next year, we'll be looking at planning on how to improve that and trying to recruit some student teams, some design teams, senior projects, and so forth that could give us some traction on those problems.
Could I add a couple more comments? So you reminded me of something when we were talking with Heather this morning. We do need help if anybody wants to be volunteer to help with the rover project. We really are shorthanded all the time. There are a lot of different things you can do. We don't expect rocket scientists or anything like that, but there's a lot of things that would really make a big difference in making that work more smoothly and give a better experience.
In addition, even though we don't work with the University Rover Challenge, there have been robotics at MDRS. There were missions that had robots, and all robots are welcome.
Yeah. Let's see. Dr. Terry?
I was curious, does the distilled experience at MDRS lend itself, or has anyone thought to pull this experience together to provide useful advice to Mars One in crew selection?
Okay, the question was, has anybody thought of distilling the MDRS experience in order to extract lessons that might inform Mars One? Not specifically, but Mars One is, we would be delighted to open a conversation with Mars One.
What's Mars One?
What's Mars One?
That's the Dutch project to put people on Mars by 2023.
It's the Dutch project to put people on Mars by 2023. Yeah. Okay. So I think we have time for one more question before we have to close.
I just had a comment on an answer a couple of answers ago. Anybody who's ever done any overnight backpacking, MDRS is luxury accommodation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, Shannon and John and I will be available this evening as we're all counting down to the big party. And we would love it if you came up and talked to us, or find us in the program and send us email, because we'd love to get to know more of you as crew, as colleagues on mission support, and as researchers who are sending in ideas for multi-team projects, and as maybe project teams or design teams that would help advise us and help provide materials to make MDRS even more effective and even more Mars-like for the crews of the next 10 years. Okay.
I also want to thank everybody who I've spoke to already today. I've been really, really excited about the conversations I've had since my talk this morning. And be in touch. Let us know what you want to do, and we'll try to make it happen.
Absolutely. Okay. So, thanks very much.